Hey there, Alex Kidman here with my quick video review of the Narwal Freo Z Ultra. Let's get into the review. But before I start, one limitation I had while I was actually reviewing this is that Narwal really wouldn't tell me for the longest time how much this thing was going to cost. I've had it for about a month, and it took a while for them to let me know what its actual value point was. So here in Australia, it's going to retail at $2,499. They are doing an early bird thing through to October the 20th where you can get it for $2,099, which is not a bad little discount. It's not a terrible price either. Now, on with the review. So at a design level, the actual Freo Z Ultra robot looks much like any other robot mop you might have seen. Comes in black or white, as I've tested here, dual mops at the back, and a rotating vacuum brush underneath, which Narwal claims is tangle-free. The body of the home dock is a little different to most other competing robot vacuum cleaners. It's got the more rounded shape that Narwal obviously favours, with, as you can see here, dual water bins, one for clean water, one for dirty water at the top, and then a front panel which opens up to reveal the detergent and dust bag compartments. This is a full self-emptying robot vacuum cleaner, and of course then the robot itself sits beneath where it sits and charges. This is all fine. I like the rounded design. I think it's a little bit more home decor friendly, but obviously tastes can totally vary there.
Started to prepare electrolyzed water.
There are a few cute design notes, like the little panel at the side that lights up when it's heating up water. It's got a very Star Wars back-to-tank feel to me. It's kind of fun. Not super necessary, but it's fun nonetheless. On the slightly more practical side, you also do get baseboard cleaning rags that clip into the side of the robot vacuum cleaner. It's one of those kind of simple, stupid, but hey, this is not such a terrible idea things. The idea here is that you clip it into the side, and then as the robot goes around, that rag will brush against sideboards and the like, picking up dirt and dust as they go. The one catch here is that, apart from the fact that they will wear out over time, they don't actually get cleaned by the robot itself. You've got to hand clean those over time instead. Installation of the Freo Z Ultra is much like any other robot vacuum cleaner. This thing is going to come in a pretty big box. Not a bad idea to have a mate on hand to actually help you even bring it into the house, let alone get it out of the box. Installation is then app-led through the Narwal app, although I did encounter a few issues getting it working. One challenge here is that the Narwal Freo Z Ultra only supports 2.4 GHz Wi-Fi, not 5 GHz if that's important to you, and that may have an impact, of course, depending on where you want to put it and where your Wi-Fi range goes. I also had a couple of early teething problems getting the iOS version of the app to actually recognize the QR code as a valid thing. Android app had no such problems, but then on the flip side, the Android app, for whatever reason, wants to drop the connection to the robot a lot. Doesn't affect its performance, it just affects how it tracks it. So clearly there's a little bit of work that Narwal could be doing there, but once that was done, it zipped around, it did a really quick map of my house. Now, despite having tested prior Narwal robot vacuum cleaners, it wanted to do a fresh map, and in fact, it did its map, even of the same area, slightly different than the previously reviewed Freo X Ultra, identifying my open plan kitchen, for example, as a complete separate room where the Freo X Ultra thought that it was part of a much larger space. And I guess there's no right answer there. At a specifications level, the Narwal Freo Z Ultra claims 12,000 pascals of suction through its vacuum head, guided by dual RGB cameras that allow it to map and detect obstacles. Like many competing models, you can opt to use the Narwal Freo Z Ultra in a remote control robot kind of way, though honestly this does feel more like a silly gimmick than something you'd use on a regular basis. Like the Freo X, the Narwal Freo Z Ultra optimally wants to use its own AI-led routines for vacuuming and mopping, with choices to just mop, or vacuum, or combine a mix of either vacuuming and mopping, or vacuuming then mopping. With cameras as good as the Narwal Freo Z Ultras and the use of AI for object detection, Narwal claims that it can detect more than 120 different kinds of obstacles, there are obviously some questions to be raised around general privacy. Good cameras plus AI, where's all this data going? Well, the answer is it's going to the cloud. And if you do want the map to include real images of obstacles, you do have to agree to letting those obstacle photos be uploaded to Narwal's cloud service. The claim here is that they're fully encrypted and deleted once no longer needed, as per their privacy policy, Though the nice thing here is that particular feature is not enabled by default and it isn't mandatory for running the Freo Z Ultra. For what it's worth, I have not been running it because I value my privacy a little bit more than that. Now, that out of the way, does all this use of AI mean that the Narwal Freo Z Ultra is smart enough to avoid obstacles and never get trapped? Well, let's have a look at the first case scenario. The big benefit of obstacle avoidance, of course, is the robot not chewing up cables or shoelaces or anything else it can get tangled with, at which point typically you've got to rescue the robot and see if it's actually damaged whatever it's picked up. And the Freo Z Ultra does a pretty good job of this. I mean, for the sake of this shot, I've just abandoned an old USB cable on my kitchen floor. You know, the way you do every single day. And before anyone panics, this one's actually defunct, so it's going to e-waste recycling anyway. But the Freo Z Ultra did nothing to it. It spun around it reasonably close. Of course, the problem here is that that area doesn't actually get cleaned, so it is smarter, in fact, to do that kind of pickup. But yeah, this stuff actually works quite well. And in fact, over a broader floor area, just being lazy, yeah, I've not really had problems with it tangling. I have had some issues with it becoming stuck, though. It got stuck under one of my low tables, for example, for a little while the first time I ran it. Now, to its credit, it seems to have learned this because it now seems to be able to actually maneuver around that same table in the same spot without getting itself stuck. So that's actually some smart operation there, and that's exactly what you want out of a more premium priced robot vacuum cleaner. My own test environment includes hard floors and both low and high pile carpets. And the Narwal Freo Z Ultra has generally done a very good job of cleaning them over the review period in a maintenance style. And when I say maintenance, what I really mean by that is these are not super high power vacuum cleaners. They're best run every day to keep things generally clean. They're not necessarily going to get absolutely right down there in the thickest of pile carpets, although this does do a reasonably good job of raising up the mops if you're doing a dual mopping and vacuuming kind of strategy. Mopping quality is generally very good, and look, I'll put that to the test with a visual example here. Oh no, I have artistically spilled coffee grounds and water all over my kitchen floor. Will it be able to mop this up? Now, this is a slightly unfair test. There's a lot of coffee here, I've got to say, so I was keen to see how well it would handle it. And the answer is, well, actually, pretty well. It did not get every single little last coffee crumb, it's got to be said. I did actually end up sending it for a second run over the area, but even as a first pass clean, that's fairly impressive stuff. It picked up the vast majority of it, it left with a mostly clean floor, and as I say, a secondary run really did just get that into tip-top condition once again. The one thing I will say about the Narwal Freo Z Ultra, though, is that it is very fastidious about cleaning up itself after itself, with a hot washing system for the mop heads that it intelligently applies if it detects that the mop heads are getting grubby. Now, that's really good at a hygiene level, but it does affect the overall cleaning time if you're doing a dual mop vacuum run. Over my test area, the Narwal Freo Z Ultra tended to take between 10 to 30 minutes longer than comparable robot vacuums to complete a large task, but that's largely because it just wanted to return to clean the mop heads a lot more frequently. Now, if we look at that coffee test that I did earlier, that's kind of instructive, because if you look at what the mop heads look like just after they'd gone over that coffee, yeah, it's not pretty, but a quick run through the mop head washing routine and they look a whole lot better. The downside here is that this is one thirsty little robot, because that much washing of the mop heads means it gets through that much more water. So for most robot mops, I tend to find that I'm changing the water about once a week on average. For the Freo X, that had dropped to around 3 to 4 days, and it's broadly the same for the Freo Z, maybe even a little bit more frequent. Typically, really, 3 days is more common. Now, that's with me running it every day over my surfaces. Obviously, yours may vary depending on the size and the complexity of the cleaning, but it is something worth bearing in mind. It's not too hard, of course, to clear out the dirty water, although it's not the most pleasant task. The Freo Z Ultra does support voice assistants as well as its app. You can use Amazon Alexa, Google Assistant, or Apple Siri, although the controls for these are buried pretty deep in the menu for the Freo app, which kind of annoys me. You could very easily miss the fact that they were in fact supported. Narwhal's one of the few that hasn't actually opted for its own voice assistant as well, although my experience with those in the past have been less than stellar, shall we say, so maybe that's a smart move. So should you buy the Narwal Freo Z Ultra? Well, look, ultimately, robot vacuums are luxury buy items, and especially in this kind of price range, and while I don't know the full pricing, clearly this is not an inexpensive robot vacuum cleaner, even more so, even more of a luxury proposition. But if you're in that market, if you're in that kind of price range, yeah, this is a really good item. It's done really well at keeping my house neat and tidy. It's smart. It's had few problems going over lifts and bumps. It's had few problems with thicker carpet. Where it has gotten stuck, it's actually seemed to have learned not to get stuck again, which is great. Obstacle avoidance is good. There's an awful lot to like here. So that's my take on the Narwal Freo Z Ultra. What do you think? Got any questions? Hit me up in the comments below, and as always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe.